Hello and welcome back to another KCC video. I'm Rob and I hope you're having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping back into some stories about Kevin. Our first story today comes to us from Dragon, my version of Kevin in a big rig. Let's jump right in. 100% credit goes to Strong Bad Jr. for opening this can of worms. If you haven't, make sure to check out his stories on here. Here we go. First off, a little backstory. I'm from a family with a lot of involvement in trucking. A few of us ended up as drivers, married drivers, dispatch drivers, or loaded trucks for a living. This particular story is one my aunt loves to share from when she was in a long-term relationship with a trucker back in the 80s and 90s. My aunt dated this guy we will call Jay for the better part of 20 years. Neither of them believed in marriage and were virtually inseparable. As such, my aunt often would go out with him whenever he left on a trip. After a while, he had his own small fleet of about 4 trucks who would run in a convoy between several customers he had. One of his drivers was the Kevin in this story. Kevin was a cocky bee. Admittedly, he had been driving around 20 years at that point, which was around 12 more than Jay at the time. He always bragged about how, "I've ran more coffee through the pisser than you have diesel fuel through an engine," whenever he would meet a new driver. Just a real overall butthole. Jay hired him simply because Kevin could do one thing better than make a butt out of himself. He could run. Any trucker will tell you. Back before electronic logging of drive hours, paper logs were the name of the game. Kevin had it down to a science. 4,500 miles a week on average. You might be wondering, if he's so great, how is he a Kevin? Well, I'll tell you. Part of Jay's conditions for hiring a driver was that the driver had to know how to at least perform basic maintenance. Jay would compensate them on a per-hour rate, stating he would rather pay his own than some scumbag who will rip you off. Jay had noticed that during each of Kevin's weeks out, he was claiming increasing amounts of time spent on maintenance. So one week, he decides to give the truck a good once-over himself. Surprisingly, he found nothing wrong. The fluids were all good, tires checked out, hoses and brakes looked great, so what the heck was Kevin maintaining? He decided to ask when he came back the next day. Kevin shows up ready to roll the following morning, and he and Jay have a chat. It turns out Kevin wasn't fixing anything. Each day, you're required to do a pre- and post-trip inspection on your truck. Kevin was charging Jay for this, and any time he did anything related to the truck. Needless to say, Jay was pissed. A cursing match ensued, followed by Kevin going home unemployed. A couple of days passed, and my aunt gets a call from Kevin's wife begging for a second chance for her husband. My aunt speaks to Jay about it, who decides he will discuss it with Kevin. A few beers, a handshake, and a hug with apologies, and all is well. Jay then tells Kevin he needs him for a trip to Maine. We all lived in Kentucky, hauling 2 loads of manure up in an end dump trailer, then picking up 2 van trailers hauling paper back. The whole trip up, Jay is about to strangle Kevin. Jay would be leading the convoy, then Kevin would blow past him. He would eventually slow enough to where Jay had to pass him, but would repeat the process. This wouldn't be much of a problem, except Kevin's trailer didn't have a tarp. These bits of manure would pepper Jay's beloved Kenworth cabover truck. It had the chrome, the chicken lights, the fancy paint, and now bits of crap thanks to a craphead. Fast forward a day or two and they've dropped the manure trailers and are rolling to pick up the paper trailers. Jay is leading the way down this country road when he locks up his brakes hard. A moose and a calf are attempting to cross the road not 15 feet from where he stopped. Kevin, being the genius that he is, hops out of the truck and strolls up beside Jay's truck. Surprised by this, Jay tells him to get his ignorant butt back in his truck. Kevin is about to say something snarky when a massive bull moose walks out from the tree line. He tucks tail and sneaks back into his truck as to not unleash the fury of this dino deer when he gets the greatest idea ever. Why not use the air horn to scare it away? This obviously did not go as planned. You see, it was the rut. This particular moose had claimed this particular road as his own. 2 cabover Kenworth trucks were not only on his territory, but had the audacity to honk at him for 10 seconds. As Jay would later tell my aunt, hell was unleashed that day. As the bull happened to be sniffing the pavement next to his truck, Jay saw Kevin grabbing the air horn in his mirror. the bull immediately jumped to the side and kicked Jay's headlights in. He then turned back and charged, antlers down, into the front of the truck. This one hit destroyed the entire windshield and dented the radiator. He then proceeded to kick what was left of the grille into the radiator, destroying it. He finally finished with destroying the driver's side window and mirrors before trotting off like nothing happened. Thankfully, Jay was physically okay. Financially, it was a bust, since one load canceled, then all the extensive repairs. He decided to take Kevin's truck and sent him home in his. Luckily, Kevin knew enough backroads as to avoid an inspection. He still got fired though. After everything, Jay just couldn't overlook the nearly $10,000 to $15,000 loss. His wife understood, and thankfully, so did Kevin. After that, he took a local job hauling building supply, and his wife was much happier. I've got several other stories if anyone wants to hear them. I, for one, really appreciate the Kevin trucking stories, so let's jump into our second story from Dragon. Story 2, Kevin in a dump truck meets Karen. Let's jump right in. So after everyone seemed to enjoy my other posts, I'll continue making them until you get tired of them. Once again, 100% kudos to Strong Bad Jr. for opening this can of worms. So here we go. As I mentioned before, I come from a family that is deeply rooted in the trucking industry. This story is from my Uncle Eddie, who was the dispatcher for a decent-sized dump truck and equipment hauling outfit near our hometown. The Kevin in this story was a new hire with nearly zero dump truck experience. Now, it may seem like dump trucking is easy, and once you're used to it, generally it can be, yet anyone who has operated a dump truck for any decent length of time will tell you an experienced operator is invaluable. Kevin was the son of a friend of the boss with about 3 years over-the-road experience. While he did know how to get from point A to point B and back, he was hard-headed when it came to instruction. On his first day, Uncle Eddie had assigned Kevin ride with Joey, who was a 5-year veteran with the company. By lunchtime, Joey was back at the yard asking that Kevin get off his truck. Uncle Eddie walked out to where Joey stood with 2 other men and asked what the issue was. Evidently, Kevin saw fit to fart in the truck every time it would hit a bump, then proceed to laugh hysterically. Uncle Eddie just let out a snort, as did the other men. Joey didn't find this funny at all and threatened to call the main boss. Kevin was removed from the truck and put under the patient wing of an older gentleman named Frank, who thankfully lost his sense of smell in Vietnam. Flash forward a year, and Kevin is still attempting dump trucking. When at all possible, Eddie puts Kevin on the extremely simple tasks. Needs 8 loads of dirt dumped in this large field? Done. Need gravel dumped in one big pile? Done. Anything else? Kevin complained. On one job, Eddie had him follow Frank down with a load of sand to spread across a spot on the ground for a pool. The entire time, Kevin was on the phone with Eddie, groaning about everything. Keep in mind, this was a 30-year-old man. Ed, Frank's driving too fast. Okay, Kevin. Ed, why can't I just dump dirt? We need you on this job, Kevin. Yeah, but I don't want to have to. Hate it for you, Kevin. I'll call the boss and he will yell at you. Wouldn't be the first time, won't be the last. The next day, Kevin goes straight to the boss's office. He comes out with him in tow and approaches the window where Eddie puts his dispatch orders. Ed, Kevin tells me you were mocking him and have previously made fun of him with others. Is this true? Uncle Eddie towards Kevin. First off, how is me needing you on a job mocking you? And second, when exactly did I make fun of you? When you put me on a job that's clearly below me, then saying I hate it for you when I simply voiced my concerns. Uncle Eddie cut him off. You do realize this past year, I've had to go out of my way to ensure you had the simplest of jobs, right? No, you didn't, but whatever. You still made fun of me with Joey when my tummy hurt. Both the bossman and Eddie looked at each other and back at Kevin. Tummy? Really? I've heard enough. Just let me know if we have any further issues. Uncle Eddie said at that point, he knew he was definitely going back over the road. Office drama, stupid customers, and whiny drivers moaning about their tummies made him realize how bad he had the itch. Besides, he had just the perfect job for Kevin before he left, Miss Karen. Obviously not her name. Miss Karen was notorious among the drivers for being, well, a Karen. She was the owner of several acres of real estate and often sought the services of the company for her dump trucking needs. She had recently made her biggest investment yet, a 3-building, 3-story apartment complex. It was touted as having all the amenities, pool, a gym, in-home laundry, basketball and tennis court. It was really going to be top of the line. During the final days of construction, all of the electrical and internet lines were attached to the buildings. At the same time, the company was also helping to pave the parking lot. Anyone who has worked on or near a paver can attest to how hot this work gets. Kevin was placed on the final crew to finish the last end of the parking lot. Karen, ever the watchful, came out to see the finalized product and to inspect anything she might not like. Immediately, she noticed Kevin munching away at a Slim Jim in his truck with music blasting. She proceeds to call Eddie at the dispatch office to complain. "ABC Dump Trucking, can I help? Your driver looks like an idiot." "Excuse me? What? This stupid driver you have in the blue dump truck looks like an idiot." "I'm sorry, who is this?" "Miss Karen from XYZ Realtors, the one who's paying for component drivers, not mouth-breathing idiots." The phone then goes quiet. "Oh no, no, stop him, no!" Random men screaming in the background, loud buzzing noises commenced, following by a thunderous crash. Karen began panting. Karen began seething. Karen began screaming. Yet above all that, what did Uncle Eddie hear? Kevin in the background declaring, "Don't get mad at me. It ain't my fault the bed of the truck didn't go down when I drove off." Karen began yelling what could only be compared to, and I quote Uncle Eddie on this, "an effing Balrog mating call" toward Kevin. Uncle Eddie grabbed the bossman, hopped in the company truck, and hauled as much butt towards the job site. When they arrived, everything was in shambles. Kevin had pulled down every single power and internet line for the complex. He also tore down the upper half of the utility pole, which was attached to the main line. Upon seeing the boss, Kevin ran to him immediately, like a kid who knew he'd done goofed. Thankfully, the bossman wasn't having any of it and fired him on the spot. One would think that upon encountering this state of affairs, you just grab your things and leave, right? Nope, not Kevin. He demands to be rehired on the spot and was told to pound sand. Karen was heard yelling at everyone she could, so the bossman and Eddie walked towards her direction. Kevin, still not taking the hint, followed closely behind. As soon as she saw the boss, she got in his face, finger outstretched, wagging it and telling him how much he now owes her. The boss was listening to her rant when she noticed Kevin. "Do you realize how much money this cost me? Time, effort? From where I was in the truck, all I could see was your hand on your hip and your finger wagging at anyone who would listen. Don't seem like that requires much effort, I'm just saying." The boss and Uncle Eddie wanted so bad to laugh. The boss later admitted that was the only time he half considered giving Kevin his job back. Kevin just did what a lot of us would do at that point. They gave them a piece of their mind when they knew it wouldn't affect their job. The job was already gone, what did he care? Do me a quick favor, have a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're not actually subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. On to our third story, written by Dragon again. This one is Kevin in a big truck meets Mr. Coo. Let's jump. I'm grateful for all the kind words about my other two stories, my dudes. As promised, here is story number 3. Also, once again, 100% kudos to Strong Bad Jr. for opening this can of worms. Now, I know you're all wondering who on earth is Mr. Coo. You see, once upon a time, circa before I was but a twinkle in Mama Dragon's eye, my uncles raised chickens. Chicken fighting was a big social thing where we are from, but my family didn't agree with it. Socially, they would discuss marches and act interested, only to go behind the patrons' backs and buy up as many of the chickens as possible under the guise of taking them upstate to fight. In reality, they took them to my grandparents' small farm where they could lay eggs, free roam, and peck around as they saw fit. One of the biggest birds they had was the star of our story, a black and white asil chicken named Mr. Coo. He had apparently been the chicken champion before my Uncle Charlie won him in a poker match. On the ride home, Charlie didn't know how this super aggressive chicken would react in the cab of his pickup. Sure enough, he gets in, plops his butt down, and all he heard was a cooing sound all the way home. Evidently, even champions enjoy the concept bye-bye. When they got home, Charlie took Mr. Koo inside the house to get him cleaned up. Evidently, Mr. Koo decided at that point he wasn't leaving. Over the next day, he would attack anyone who tried to get him to walk out the door. Yet, as mighty as he was, when the hens started calling and clucking about, Mr. Koo decided there were greater things in life than chilling on the couch. He even impressed my grandpa when he actually managed to kill a fox that got into the chicken coop. Not only that, but he barely had a scratch on him. When he was found, he was sitting on the fox like a trophy. When you think about it, technically, we had a pet attack chicken. Now that we've caught that up, let's learn about the Kevin in our story. In Uncle Eddie's words, Kevin was an idiot. They had worked together at a local trucking company. They mainly ran auto parts to Laredo, Texas, and back to several locations across the Midwest. Similar to the Kevin in the first story, this Kevin was cocky. Yes, he could run. Yes, he knew well how to operate a truck. Unfortunately, he didn't know how to keep from running his mouth on people. Every time Eddie stopped with him at a diner or some small mom and pop to get fuel, he complained. Got coffee? Pfft, it's too weak. Food? I wouldn't let my dog eat that, but I guess I'll have to suffer. Shower? Water was too cold and there were spots everywhere. Flash forward to the week of the incident we are all here for. Uncle Eddie and Kevin happened to be near the farm and decided to take a week off for a clean bed, home-cooked meals, and some fishing. As they roll up in the trucks on Sunday, my mama happened to be there. She was barely 18 at the time, and Eddie and Kevin were in their late 20s. Kevin took this as a perfect time to flirt. Eddie, already sick of his BS from the road, slammed him upside the truck. Now son, I've seen you whine and cry for months now. I've put up with it. But you get within an inch of her, and those chickens will eat good for a while. Okay, sheesh. Kevin brushes himself off after Eddie lets him go. You have my word. They shook on it and proceeded inside. Kevin, of course, had a retort. Besides, chickens don't even eat meat. Eddie pointed towards Mr. Koo, who happened to be glaring a hole in Kevin. Tell that to him. Pfft, just throw a fox in there with him and you'll see who's the meat eater. Mama had walked up and given Uncle Eddie a hug at this point and heard what Kevin had said and laughed. Well, considering he killed the last one, I think they're all afraid to come around anymore. Kevin's eyes got big as Mr. Koo still glared at him from the yard. Dinner that evening was a great time. According to Uncle Eddie and Mama, my grandma went all out with all the fixins, as we call it. Having had 4 kids, she still cooked for an army, so there was plenty to go around. As for Kevin's complaints, Grandma shot him down. As soon as they sat down, she led the table in a simple prayer, which included the line, "And we are going to remain grateful for the food we have received," while giving him a quick glare. Monday morning comes and goes with everyone sleeping in, except Grandma, of course. She's up with the chickens, tossing seed and other small bits from dinner the night before. Eddie wakes up and strolls over to the bathroom to handle his morning business. Upon returning to his room, he notices his drawer where his wallet was kept had been left ajar. Strange, he thought, but Grandma appeared behind him. "Now, I done went through your wallet and didn't see no money. You got a savings account?" "Yes, Ma." Granny glared at him with that look she has had for years. Think of that meme of Fry from Futurama, only an older Southern belle with the sass of Sophia off of the Golden Girls. "You said I didn't have any money in there, though? I could have sworn I had at least $40. "I didn't see anything, but you might have gotten better at hiding things, though." They hugged. Grandma told Eddie it was nice to have him home for a bit, and they parted ways through the house. About this time, Kevin stepped out of the bathroom. "So, you're missing money? So, you're eavesdropping? Hey man, I just didn't want you to think it was me. Did I say it was you? No. Okay then. Now get your head out of your butt and come help me get this fishing gear together." They got the pickup truck loaded up and headed to the far end of the land, where our local river had an amazing little beach. When they arrived, some of the local women were downstream about 100 yards swimming. Kevin took this as his perfect time to make a move, despite Eddie telling him not to. "I got this," he says. Yeah, he got over there. One of the girl's boyfriends happened to be a guy Eddie knew, had previous boxing training. So what does Kevin do? He runs his mouth. Eddie tells it like this. He glanced over at Kevin while tying his hook to his line. He hears Kevin say, "So, what are you gonna do about it, punk?" He hears a loud thwack and Kevin on his back in the sand. Dude stood over him, fist balled up, ready to hit him again when his girlfriend grabbed him. They get their things and leave. Uncle Eddie proceeded to finish baiting his hook and cast his line, take a seat, crack open a cold beer, and enjoy himself. Kevin is still 100 yards downstream, laying on his back for another 5 minutes or so. He mouths off something towards the group as they're leaving, then noticed Eddie kicked back on the bank. Kevin, at the top of his lungs, "Ain't you gonna help me?" Eddie just looked at him and took a drink of beer. Kevin gets himself cleaned off and comes back over to where Eddie was. Kevin starts to say something, but Eddie cuts him off. "It will serve you best to keep it in your pants while you're here. If you can't, go ahead and hit the road. I ain't your keeper. You're welcome to stay, but I ain't saving you." Kevin didn't say another word about it. By the next morning, they rolled in with a whole mess of catfish for dinner. My grandma had breakfast ready for them. They washed up, ate breakfast, and decided to take a couple-hour nap. After everyone got up, they went out on the porch before dinner was ready. Mr. Koo was pecking around the base of the steps when Kevin kicked a small stone from the porch at him. Mr. Koo glared at him. "You do that again, and he's going to attack you. Yeah, whatever, it's just a stupid hen," and proceeds to do it again. Uncle Eddie said it was like something from the freaking Matrix took over Mr. Koo. When the stone was near him, he jumps up and over it, wings flapping and talons out, going straight for Kevin. Not quite having time to process this Rambo Fowl's fury, he begins to laugh, only to turn it into an "oh crap" as he trips out of his rocking chair to run inside. Mr. Koo is right on his ankles. He claws at his jeans and his boots while pecking at his calf muscle. Luckily, Kevin throws him back long enough to get inside the screen door. "Ha, now you stupid bird," kicks the bottom of the screen door. Grandma with carving knife in hand, "You kick my damn door like that again and I'll show you a stupid bird." Uncle Eddie had picked up Mr. Koo and took him to the other side of the house and came in the side door. "Eddie, honey, your friend here is about to get it if he kicks my door again. I ain't saying it again. Now y'all come in here and get some of this fish." Kevin just looked around with a scowl. Not much was said over dinner, but Kevin finished early and excused himself to bed. Very early that next morning, everyone is woken up by a thunderous crash inside the hallway. Thinking Grandma had fell, Eddie ran outside to find Grandma standing over top of Kevin with a frying pan. "Mama, what happened? What's going on?" "I caught this one here was rummaging through my chest of drawers I keep in the hall closet. That's where I always keep my jewelry and some emergency money." Sure enough, Kevin had a pair of earrings in the floor next to his hand. He had just started to come to when Uncle Eddie punched him as hard as he could. "So I bring you here as a token of friendship, and you steal off me and my family? Nah, you're gone." Eddie went into the room Kevin was staying at and went through his bag. Inside, he found the $40 he was missing. He found a disposable camera, 2 other pairs of earrings, and a small gold chain necklace my great-grandfather had given to my grandma. All in all, it might have been worth a couple hundred at best, but it was the principle behind it. My grandma just collected her belongings, put everything back as it was, and placed Kevin's bags outside. Uncle Eddie drug him outside until he woke up. He immediately tried to swing on Eddie, but ended up tripping himself. As he got up, Mr. Koo came close. He proceeds to punt Mr. Koo towards his truck. Uncle Eddie wanted to run after him again, but my grandma stopped him. Instead, threw his bags at him. Kevin opens his bag to check for a rag to clean up the blood on his busted lip when he notices the missing goods. Heh, it was just a bunch of useless costume jewelry anyway. I ain't worried about it. He opens his driver's side door and gets the truck started to warm up and inflate the air tanks. He then takes his bags over to his passenger side. My grandma then notices Mr. Koo hopping up on his bottom step, then his top step, then as he shuts the passenger side door, he hops in the cab. Did you just... Yep. A sly grin comes across their face as Kevin flips them off and hops in the cab. As he catches third gear, he begins to swerve hysterically. His trailer is tipping hard while his truck slams into a large rock. He then rolls off to the left and into a small creek embankment. The door opens and Kevin staggers out of the truck and lands on the ground. A few moments later, Mr. Koo casually struts out of the cab, onto the step, flogs at Kevin one last time before doing that characteristic peck walk chickens do, back towards the house. They ended up calling 911 because they figured between a frying pan, a hard right hook, a severe chicken flogging, and a truck wreck, he may need medical care. When the police showed up, he demanded Mr. Koo be put down. The cops laughed at him, especially once they heard our side of the story. According to Uncle Eddie, the company they ran for let him go due to the accident. He also ended up with over 50 stitches from the cuts and pecks he got. Mr. Koo, on the other hand, got all the chicken feed and worms his heart could desire. He also got a vet visit to ensure Kevin didn't do anything major. The vet actually laughed and said he probably jumped with the kick and was basically doing a chicken version of the bob and weave. Mr. Koo lived another 8 years after this. He often spent time either chasing hens, dogs, cats, randos who would come up on the porch asking for stuff, all the like. To this day, Uncle Eddie still misses his pet attack chicken. A couple things to touch on here. Grandma sounds like a badass, and I think I need an attack chicken. I think I speak for all of us when I say we will long talk about the legend of Mr. Koo, and I really hope Dragon writes some more stories. Thank you so much to Dragon for writing part 3 when I requested it. I knew from the writing of the first 2 that the viewers were really going to enjoy these stories, and with part 3, Dragon did not disappoint. So thanks again. Check out OP Dragon at the links in the description down below. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.